Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Margot Robbie Retrospective, aka the Wolf of Wall Street Retrospective. I am the Duchess Trasnell, and I'm joined by.
I'm the Duke, Kirkland Patzer.
I'm Mark Astrodolas.
Yeah, so not that this is the start of something, which, as we've said before, when we get through all these retros, when we're sitting here 60, maybe we'll start always doing actors and directors and game developers, stuff like that. But we do these in honor of, we do some one-offs, Halloween, Christmas, maybe some other, maybe like Oscars. That's how we did Parasite this year. So in honor of Barbie, because with Oppenheimer coming out, we're releasing every single Nolan retrospective. So we got to give Barbie a little bit of love. So that's what we're doing here. And this is why head over to Patreon and join that. Get episodes ad-free, early, and exclusive. You got about, by the time this releases, about 15 more days to get us up to 50 patrons. And then you guys can unlock 5 specific episodes of GV Bingo. There's more details about that on the front page. But we really would appreciate if you go over there and join any tier to get us to that. But more specifically, if you want to become a Patreon producer like Aaron Braden, April Darkness, Joshua Wright, Jack Grant, and Muds, you get to vote on these. Now, there was a tie, but that's what happens. Is the community puts up contenders, but the Patreon producers, they get to be the deciding vote. They get to say, this is what you guys are talking about. There was a tie between this and I, Tonya, and that's went to the rest of the patrons, and that's where we landed on The Wolf of Wall Street. So we picked a movie that we said starring or supporting. Obviously, this is more a supporting role, but I think it's a fun full circle because this is the role that put her on the map to where she is now. So Dylan Musk, I want to start with you. What did you think? Well, have you seen this movie before? What do you think of it then, and what did you think about it now? Is this your first time, etc., as we usually do here?
Yeah, funnily enough, I feel like this mirrors pretty closely when we talked about Parasite earlier this year because I don't know if I saw this movie in theaters necessarily, but I have seen it many times now. I must be getting close to 10, like probably like 6 or 7 or something like that, which, once again,
It's rare for
me,
Dylan.
That's a lot. Yeah. That is
Tell
a
us
lot.
about each of the times you've watched it.
Yeah.
Okay, so the first time I was high on, but no, I love this movie. I think it's so much fun. Obviously, the performances are just so over the top and fantastic. It's a long movie, and not in the Taylor long, but in the long of just like there's so much going on. It feels like an odyssey, even though it's just like a bunch of rich people doing shitty things, but I like the way the story is told. I think the cinematography and like directing, all that stuff is just stellar. This movie is so stylish. There are so many iconic characters and scenes and all that. So yeah, this has got to be, much like Parasite, one of my just favorite all-time kind of movies. And yeah, I probably even watched it like in the last couple of years too, so it's still pretty fresh. This is one of the very few where I feel like I probably didn't even need to rewatch it for this, but of course I'm always glad I did because a couple new things are going to pop up and whatnot. But yeah, I think even, when you're talking about this of just like, okay, what are the patrons going to pick? What is it between and stuff like that? And when Travis, when you told us, okay, Wolf of Wall Street's the one to watch, get watching it, I was like, oh, interesting. Like, I feel like she's not she's in the movie, but she's not in a whole lot. She's not the star or anything, but rewatching again, it's like, yeah, there's a lot of Margot Robbie content in here. I guess more so than I even remembered. So, yeah, I am excited to talk about this. I don't know why. I didn't ever really think about this as being one that we'd retro. It just didn't really make sense with the stuff we typically do. But I'm glad we are finally here talking about it. So, yeah.
Yeah, and that's why we did these, because I found there'll be a point at some point in our lives, but doing a Martin Scorsese retro, as we talked about last week, would be quite the feat because it's like 70 plus projects. It's like the guys directed a lot, so it's like never going to get that situation because there's probably movies like Kings of Comedy that aren't going to do the grace. But that's where I like doing these ones, because just like Parasite, where we all kind of feel like, oh, we kind of missed the chance to. That's when Golden Geeks function was a little bit different. We all kind of missed that chance to talk about it, and we did it years later. So that's what these one-offs are good, because we can get like I would have never thought we would have reviewed Megamind, but we did. There's I think I liked that's what happened early on in COVID, right, where people were just throwing, when we had everyone throwing movies because there was no content, and that was fun. Of like, okay, we're talking about a bunch of movies that are very random. So yeah, I'm happy we're doing it. Kirk and Pats, are you happy we doing it?
I was very happy we were doing this. It's just gave me an excuse to rewatch this movie. I think I'd seen it 3 times prior to this, so definitely not as much as Dylan. It's one of those where, like, it just seems like, okay, I got to set aside some time jump into the Wall Street. I probably wouldn't just throw it on just to throw it on. Like I have movies to do that. I don't know if I'm doing chores or something, just throw it on in the background. But this one, I want to sit down and just go on this adventure, which is the absolute crazy madness, which is like the story of Jordan Belfort and the Wall Street Stratton company that he set up, and it's so over the top. And I feel like every single time I watch it, it just seems more over the top than the previous viewing. And something else that's really wonderful about rewatching this is I feel like I've appreciated maybe a certain character more on another rewatch, or maybe just the way that a scene was shot. Like there's just something that I can appreciate more with every time that I watch this film, and I feel like that just speaks to the quality of it. It is a 3-hour movie, like it is lengthy, but the pace is really good for the length of the movie. I feel like it's at moments there's just so much going on chaotically, but it fits with just the drug-filled chaos that's going on in the locations and everything. So yeah, I really, really love this movie. I was laughing out loud many times throughout this movie. As I stated, I appreciate something on each one, on each rewatch, and this one specifically, it was John Bernthal's character of Brad. I feel like I never loved Brad so much on this one, especially just like his introduction. Like that scene is just so good, and this character that he plays is just, man, I need more John Bernthal in my life. Maybe it's like, I don't know, I gotta throw on The Walking Dead or something just to get some John Bernthal.
Daredevil.
Punisher. Daredevil retro.
Yeah.
It's coming up. Yeah.
There you go. There you go.
Reasons keep piling on.
The reasons keep piling on, but yeah, I truly love this movie. It's insane. Every majority of the characters in here are just pieces of shit characters, but it just makes it so entertaining how far they go and like rationalizing what they're doing. It's just like there's no like morals at all with like majority of these characters. They're just total piece of shit. Just drug filled, hookers and blow, all that stuff, screwing people over, screwing the government, all of that stuff. And just really, really well told story too. It's a fun watch.
Yeah, I think that's the best example we talk about so many times of people have to walk that line when you can make a movie all the time about irredeemable people, but you have to make it somewhat interesting, right? Because you're not necessarily sure there are some good people in here, but they're not our main characters. So I don't feel I'm ever watching this cheering for Jordan Belfort, right? You're cheering as far as like the movie and how it goes, but that's where you got to walk that fine line. Tarantino's another one that can do that. Where same thing I always say, like Pulp Fiction, one of my favorite movies, but they're all criminals, right? They're all bad people. Even Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, you have Brad Pitt who might have murdered his wife. So you're like, I love this guy, but there's something, and that's where I find that's the most comparable, and maybe that's why I sometimes say Tarantino's best work is Hollywood. The same way I think this is probably Scorsese's work. I don't know how many times I've seen this because Scorsese to me is the greatest director of all time. So this is like a yearly watch for me. I watch it probably a couple times every once in a while, but it's just a movie that I will get in a mood because I think this is that best example of you got the scum of the world, and I just looked it up and I'm always surprised I didn't even get nominated for an editing Oscar, because to me that's what really holds this together is, of course, directing, acting, but this movie is 3 hours and it just flies by at a really good pace. Not flies by in a bad way. It's edited so well between the quick cuts, between the flashback kind of, people have memed like the Family Guy-esque moments and stuff, but Marty does them in a certain way where it doesn't feel like that. All the performances, it's one of those movies where I feel like we talk about all the time, some movies and TV shows, when they time jump, that can really hurt it or it can be poorly executed. And this will go times where he'll meet Margot Robbie's character, and then 10 minutes later they're married with a kid, and you're like, man, that really, and it's like years later because she's like, one of the kids is like 3, but they don't ever say like 5 years later, 2 years, it's moving, and it's one of those movies like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood where I could probably take another hour. It's perfect where it is, but it's just, I love being in this world of just depravity and just the worst of the worst and seeing how it all goes down. And I like the good criminal story. Martin Scorsese, he's a master at that. It's still, Goodfellas is still my favorite Scorsese one, but this is up there, and this is easily one of the greatest films of all time. Like, it's such a hyperbole statement, but it's fantastic. And on the Robbie front, while we're doing this, it's funny because we talked a little bit about this, so it'll be a repetition for Kirkham, but we were talking about Margot Robbie when we were driving up to the cabin to film some of our movie stuff, and I think why this made her so big and so where she is now is because we've seen millions of roles of a character be the seductress or the sex pot, but they are hired primarily just for their good looks, right? Just because they are a very beautiful, attractive individual. But I think what puts Margot aside, because if you just watch trailers, posters, that's what she is, right? She's just the eye candy. That's all she is. But when you actually watch the movie, especially when we get to the back end of the movie, you can see she's holding these scenes with Leo, and you kind of see the emerging of a star where it's like, okay, no, she's not just the classic quote, like a pretty face. And they do this with guys too. There's guys that are just like that, right? That have a look, but they don't have much. Like, I'm not going to be mean and list some people, but we've seen that tons of times where this is the next star and it's just, well, he's a pretty face and that's about it, right? And that's where she definitely shifts near the end, and there's a lot of versatility she has to do with this role. She's not the main character, but I always think that's the reason why she blew up and stay. It's something where there's some characters, like you look at, she's still around. So I'll use an example, Megan Fox in the Transformers era, right? Where she was massive and all over the place, but she's not in much that nowadays because there's like a limit to her performing abilities, right? And that's not a bad thing to say. That happens to all people. I feel like that's the same way with Sam Worthington and Avatar, but with her, she just really delivers. And especially for her, I'd seen her in some airport show on ABC. It's where she was like a stewardess, and that's all I'd seen her from. But she's in there with heavy hitters, especially with Leo, holding her own. So she does a fantastic job. But yeah, the movie's just perfectly paced, perfectly edited, perfectly performed. And Leo, we're not talking about because it's not like the Leo retro, but he's so damn good. I feel like this is the role he's going to go. He didn't win the Oscar for this, but I feel like this is the role he's going to be remembered for the most. Even in our culture now, it's like the memes alone, just how much you see Wolf of Wall Street. And that's definitely just alone. Like, this movie is stuck in the zeitgeist for years. I feel like it's a movie that always people are talking about, coming up, things like that. And, yeah, it's withstood the test of time because it's funny actually we're doing this. It's 10 years old. I don't know when it came out, but it came out in 2013. Yeah, so I don't know. I'll have to get the exact date. So it's kind of funny. It's a good 10-year anniversary.
July 12th. Whoa! No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. Oh my god! Yeah, but no, it's one of these movies I don't. Even at times when we talk about movies that are, I would say, like nearly perfect and some of my favorites, I could say like, oh, there's this nitpick. Even The Dark Knight, it's like, oh, I can nitpick that scene. I don't really have it here. There's definitely scenes that you could just cut out. There's like a 5-minute scene of them talking about like the little person tossing, right? Doesn't really need to be in there at all, other than it just December, right? Because Oscar time, that makes
Christmas
sense.
Day.
Yeah. I did not see Christmas. I saw it the week after. That was not a pitch going on in my household. First Christmas with Emily, but there's scenes you could cut per se, but they all add to like these people are pieces of shit and they're all acted well. So yeah, fantastic movie. So break open this stand. Where do we want to go? Do we start from the beginning? Start from scenes we like, characters, etc. Dylan, sounds like you got somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like we should just start by talking about Robbie in here.
Yes.
Just because that's what this is. And, as we mentioned, like, you could have a lot of conversation about this movie without talking about her just because she's not the star, and there's a lot of sequences without her. But even then, I thought it was interesting rewatching it and really through the lens of trying to keep an eye on what she's doing and that she's there, like, immediately in the movie, right? But then that's essentially where like 45 minutes is into the movie. I thought that was kind of an interesting thing. Oftentimes you'll see that it's like it shows like a movie starts with the end and then you go back to the start and you get to that point. But I like that they do it for this movie, and it's just like, about a third in randomly. So it's like she's in there kind of early on, but then kind of goes away. But yeah, I mean, obviously this was the first thing I ever saw her in. And yeah, I think you make a good point of, like, obviously she's very beautiful and like stands out in that way. And there's some scenes in particular like, ooh, wow, that's pretty wild. But I think it's a testament to like how far above that she goes, and especially what you're saying towards kind of the end of the movie where it becomes a bit more emotional and you really like start to feel bad for her near the end. And obviously, I mean, some certain scenes in particular. But man, even just like the accent that she's doing here, I mean, that's just one of the, like, outside of this movie, just Margot Robbie in general is fucking how good she is with accents. I don't think I've ever even heard her real voice, right? Obviously, like Harley and this are like pretty iconic accents for her, but just like the standard American accent she's doing all the time, and like it's flawless and all that. So yeah, I mean, even like she's clearly, even back 10 years ago, was just already amazing. I mean, I don't think I've ever gone back to watch a movie of hers like pre this. I should do that.
Gotta watch Z for Zachariah. She's she's got an American Southern accent in it, and I remember I like walked like I think my dad had it on or something, and I'm just like, holy fuck, who it like she looks like Margot Robbie, but that can't be her. Just and this is also an era when like I didn't hear her actual voice. I thought she did have like that Brooklyn type accent. So yeah, just speaking to the range of it's amazing what some people can do with their accents. But yeah, no, so this I didn't see this like right away. Actually, I think I saw this maybe like the summer that it did come out, or maybe in the springtime, because this was my grad year, and I remember seeing it, Impressionable Young Man, and just being like, who is this actress? Oh my god, she's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen in my entire life.
Hit
I was
up
like the
Google
Jordan
when
Belfort
you
type.
Get in the car after.
Yeah, it's a meme that always goes around on Twitter all the time, but they do it for both male and female. It's like, name the person that's looked the best on screen ever, and my answer is always Margot Robbie, Wolf of Wall Street, because it's just even the way Marty and the team shoots her, they just always make sure she's lit very well to have almost like a angel aesthetic. She's very it's because they have like a bunch of spray tan on her too, I think, but she's always very bright and stuff like that, where you got Belfort, who's usually in his suits. He has they dye Leo's hair blacker, but they shoot her to look like a movie star, and she was nobody at this point. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I feel like in Pulp Fiction when they open the briefcase and it's just like glowing.
Yes.
That's like me when I'm watching.
Like Margot
She's on
Robbie was
screen.
in there.
Yeah, they got to see early cut of Wolf of Wall Street. Like, oh, well, good. And
And like getting back to what I was saying earlier, where like every rewatch, something just I don't know, I notice more, appreciate more, and I think it was the second time I did watch it, because the first time it was just like I don't know who this actress is, but she's just super beautiful. But the second time around, like actually just seeing the performance of like the range also, and then also even just seeing her in things now, and then going back to like this one, it's like wow, like she's actually always had those acting chops, and specifically in like yeah, like you said, like the later half when stuff gets a lot more serious around her character, she's not just partying, doing blow, and just fucking. Like she's actually has a daughter, and it's like she is that whole like she's a mom now, and like things aren't just crazy in her. Well, it is crazy in her life, but she doesn't want it to be that way. And yeah, just the way that she reacts to Jordan being a complete total piece of shit, it definitely like you feel for her. And yeah, I obviously this is the Margot retro, so I was very much looking out for those moments. Even like there's scenes when Jordan and Donnie are just doing crazy shit, and like I didn't even realize that she's actually in a lot of those scenes too, because she's actually at the house, whether she's pregnant or whatnot. So yeah, I was I mean, yeah, she's a superstar from her first get go. So it is cool just seeing where she's come, and she's just maintained that level. Gotta add that Z to Zachariah to your list there, Dylan. I love it because I feel like Travis is the only person that's ever heard of this movie, Z for Zachariah, and yeah, nobody else that I've heard of has seen this one.
The first time I ever saw it was just like the cover, because the cover is like it's just like faces on a like it looks like a fake movie at times and stuff. It's not a bad movie and stuff like that, but
it's not, but
yeah, and it's one of those too that I love that with old movies when people blow up, because people like when my daughters grow up and they see Margot Robbie was in this with Leo, they're like, oh yeah, it was two massive stars doing these movies together. But it's like that's not the case. She wasn't that at this point, right? So it's always fun to go back and see that. But yeah, I think you get like because the movie, of course, is not her journey. It's not the character of Naomi, but you get to see those changes too clearly, whether it's his attraction or whether it's the character purposely just wants to be put in a situation so they'd be taking care of the money. She's out to get Jordan, right? So they establish right away that she is a vixen. She gets what she wants. That line delivery of like, we're not going to be friends. So right away, it's almost said in like a villainy type of way, right? And then in the middle, there's kind of like a once they're married, and and even then he's still screwing up because he's doing lots of drugs and cheating, but still like once they're married, you can see she's a lot more controlling situations and want him to kind of get in line. And then very the near end, you just see how much she's done with the character. I love when not everything that happens at scene, but when they get in the first fight and his first reaction is just to go to that pillowcase and just rip it open to do the drugs. And all she's there, and that's where it's like it's a flip, because she's talking about how disgusting he is and how pathetic, even though she's been in this situation many points in her life before, right, of drugs and ODing and all. She's been around, she's been helping breaking laws, because even then she has a high and mighty when he's like, oh yeah, you're not gonna go away, nothing's gonna happen to you, and she's like, yeah, I didn't do anything wrong. Technically she did she was a co-conspirator many times, times, but she kind of has that better than you, whether it is just kind of pushing him away or whether she feels like she has evolved past that and doesn't want to do that. So it's not that you get to spend, of course, with Jordan Belfort's character, you spend this 3-hour movie, you're spending about 90% of it with him, but they do give her a mini arc in the times that we get her, even the point where, you know, they try to wave to her and she doesn't wave. So I think they do a good job, because I don't think any other characters other than Jordan her really get arcs per se. You know, they just kind of get arrested, die. Like even Jonah Hill's character, nothing, he just gets arrested, right? Those are only the two characters. And even you could argue that Jordan Belfort doesn't really have an arc. Like that's always been the argument with this movie, because he has two kids. One he is good with now, and the other one still thinks he's a piece of shit. And I remember the big thing was that she wasn't a fan of this being successful because it like pushes that narrative, right? And that's always been the case that people, and Mari's tried to say, like, I tried to make this movie to show that it's not a good life. I think that happens for the most part. I think it fails a little bit in the end when you also have Jordan Belfort introducing Leo at the end, and they have that shot of Kyle Chandler on the train, kind of like almost looking bummed out. So that's where I go, not exact. Like, I feel like you should try to be maybe a bit more of the high road, and that's maybe push back some critics, but there's not. So really, she kind of does have the more bigger arc, because right when Jordan gets out of prison, he's back to scheming, but in a more legal way, you know? So
yeah, it's always for his own self-interest.
Yeah.
I was reading some interviews with her talking about the making of this movie, and that honestly led me down like a huge rabbit hole of reading a bunch of interviews about just how this movie was made, and I want to talk about some of those things later on. But one thing that really stood out to me is during her audition, I guess she kind of sensed that, like, I don't know, the audition, it was maybe going fine, but like, you know, she didn't have it in the bag or anything like that. And she was like, she realized she was running out of time. And so just like on the cuff moment, she just, and I guess Leo was like, I guess he was even a part of the project. I think even before Scorsese was like doing
producer,
it, right?
Yeah.
Well, the story is he got the book, and he for years was trying to make the movie. So he got it. Yeah. So he was a producer, but he was after this for a while.
I thought that was interesting too. Yeah, Scorsese was like brought in as like, who's gonna direct this movie? And they're like, well, I guess we'll get like maybe the biggest guy in the business. But yeah, so anyway, so he's there in the audition, you know, trying to find who this Naomi is for the movie. And yeah, just during this audition, it wasn't going her way, so she just walked up to it and just like slapped him across the face. And that was like the, you know, the little bit of venom that they needed to show that this was the actress for the job, because she did this thing, which I feel like is a very risky move to, I mean, hit Leo. You could probably just have you sued to all hell. Yeah, like,
exactly.
Yeah.
You know, if you broke like a bone or something in his cheek, you'd be just done forever. But it was that kind of like, I don't know, just quick thinking, that it was that instinct that like just really being kind of in that character, in that like understanding the harshness of the role and who you need to be. So I thought that was a pretty interesting story, and I wonder if anyone's copied that strategy since, and probably has not been successful with it. It seems like kind of like a once in a lifetime kind of opportunity to attack someone in your audition, but it works out for you.
Just don't slap Marty, the 80-year-old director, because that can take him down. If you kill Marty Scorsese, your career is over. But yeah, no, it's funny because I'd read that and put that in the trivia, and there was a moment where that happened and it was silent, and then everyone laughed, so she knew like it went all right, and obviously it happened. So no, she was, because again, we talked about this in the cabin drive up. That was the other thing too, that she was she wanted to be naked. Me and Kirkland talking about that, because Kirkland said it in a way I can't remember. I think
said it exactly the way it was.
No, I think you said almost like there's a. He was half
when
right,
did this
and I was
drive
half
happen?
right.
Like, did you guys know we were talking about this movie, or were you just
No,
outside?
no.
You were just talking.
I don't even know
about
how
I
it?
think Kirkland brought this up. No, because it was an article. He's like, "Oh, haven't you seen?" And it was almost like Kirkland said, like she wanted to be naked in every movie. I'm like, "Oh, I don't know if that's
No,
exactly.
that's not what I said. It
No,
was
I'm
more
saying-
so like the way that they were doing that scene. It's fine if she's just in lingerie, but then she wanted to go the next step and be like, no, Naomi would have used her body to like actually get the one up
That's
on
her
Jordan.
currency in this world.
Yeah, exactly.
I
And that's
put
the
it in
way
the trivia.
that's the way that
Yeah,
I read that article, at least. Maybe I didn't relay that information well enough to Travis, but
It
that
was
was my
different,
what I had in my head.
Kirkland's mind read nude, and then his mind came up with.
She just wants to be nude and everything, guys. Can you believe this?
He gave you the headline version. I was like, I don't know about that. And then we read it. It was like, okay.
Headline only moment.
But he was right overall. It was just how it was fed to me. I was like, I don't know. But yeah, that was the story that originally Scorsese said it was just going to be. It was written for her to be in a robe, and she was the one. So, and Scorsese, that's the other thing I have in the trivia. Majority of lots of these scenes where the characters just hanging out, it's just them improving and stuff. So Scorsese is a very kind of versatile, very flows director. Like you see Leo Osty's a producer, but they don't have like. Okay, of course, I don't know. I don't want to put the guy hat on. I'm sure when she pitched to be naked, they're like, no, don't do that. But still, he has the power to shoot that down and be like, no, we're doing it this way. So her pitching that, going out that mile, she also told her family that it was CGI at first, but then she copped to it later on and stuff like that. But yeah, so that was the thing where, you got multiple people. He's trusting other cast members to improv and get these things done. So the crew and cast had a lot of input on this one, and and I agree with the take on that as far as this, specifically this character, when we meet her at the very beginning of the movie, like I said, you can tell she has nothing but intentions to bed Jordan Belfort and to kind of like, at this point, even before they get married, he's still giving her money, supplying her with a bunch of nice things. They set Naomi very much up to be a character that's jumping from one rich guy to another. And that's what they do say that, but they actually hit it off. So that's the difference. But even then, like I said, once they get married, it's mostly just a lot of negative scenes between the two of them, right? Which the real Naomi in real life confirmed that scene in the baby pantry thing never happened. She said the only thing that's true about that there was cameras and the teddy bears, but the whole underwear and short skirts, so that's nothing that ever happened. She said that's something that, and it's funny that if you find interviews with her, she says a lot of that stuff happened, but she feels like the way Jordan wrote the book and the way she's portrayed in the movie, that was like Jordan's image of her, but she was never as sexy or seductress as, and maybe it's reverse, or maybe she's just gorgeous woman that didn't know she's putting that off, but that's what she said, that she was never had the confidence that Margot Robbie had in this role,
I mean, and that's, of course she is who this person is based off, so all that is accurate to her retelling of it, but like the movie is specifically told from his perspective. I mean, he's the narrator of it too, right? So I can totally understand if that's not accurate, but I think that totally, it tells the story better, obviously. Obviously you got to glam up all of these things. Even though there's a pretty wild scenarios already, you still got to Hollywoodify them, I guess.
It's like when he is on the Quaaludes and he drives home and he's like, I got home without a scratch, but that's his perspective, and then we realize what happened. Obviously, it fills in the gaps.
Yeah, he's on drugs for most of these events in real life, so it makes sense that he's not remembering them correctly.
That was actually something that I was thinking about on this viewing, is like, man, this guy does so much fucking hard drugs that like, how much of this is actually accurate, or like his mind is just
majority. He says, at least he says it was worse in real life.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah, like how much he did, but he said that he and his guys they had a way to level it out, so they would take enough downer pills or drugs and take enough upper, so you'd be at like a perfect high. Yeah. So that's where that obviously not all the time worked out, but he even says like the scene where they go to Vegas for the bachelor party in the book, and I've never read it. Emily has the book. I've always wanted to, but he says it's much worse, but they wouldn't let a lot of that stuff in the film. So it sounds like he said that he was on even more so drugs, and I think he is not doing that anymore. So
I would hope so. Otherwise, he might not still be around.
Yeah, not sustainable. Yeah.
I just feel like especially like just the cocaine type aspect is like you see something different in like a different light, in like a more positive sense of like than what actually the situation is. So I feel like while I was watching it, I'm like, man, if they're just like so coked up on this, like, was it actually going this smoothly, or is just that's his perspective of it? But yeah, sounds like he found a balance, but also it's just a lot of information pulls to tell the story, not just his specific telling, but it is based off the book, so curious to what level. I don't know, maybe I'll have to check out that book one day. It is just a fascinating tale with how like illegal all these activities are, and just unhealthy all these lifestyles is. It's just so entertaining, and I think that's why this movie is so just rewatchable, because it's just like I was watching it with Shay too, and like there's so many scenes that happen that she's like, that is so awful, oh my god, it's so terrible, but she's laughing with me, and I'm like, it's like, it is awful, but it's just so shocking that like it just gets you, like whether they're just doing crazy shit in the office party wise, or just all like the things that he says and the way that they talk to each other, it's just hilarious to me. And yeah, she's like, this is so fucking awful, but then 2 minutes later she's just giggling at like something that's even worse. So there's something about that sort of entertainment that for me specifically, I just find it so entertaining. And I mean, this is a very successful movie, so clearly a lot of people feel that way too.
I found another interesting tidbit from an interview with Margot Robbie, where she was saying that like really the only directing that had been, I guess, directing, whatever how you want to pronounce that was like given to her was specifically during the scene when she like splashes water on Jordan and like runs away, and Scorsese just told her to like go more on her toes when she did it, and she didn't know if that was like physically go more your toes or like more of like a, try to act in this slightly different way. But regardless, like whatever this random little scene is, but I thought that was an interesting detail that, especially for someone who like her, who I don't know if he had even ever seen a movie with her in it before, but he just like seemed to have so much faith in her, and obviously she was just that good in a way. And I think it goes to what you're saying, Travis. Like a lot of this is improv and I don't know, just a very interesting style to make a movie, different from like what I would have expected or what I or how I can just even picture movies are made. But I found it kind of interesting that she really didn't seem to receive much direction from Scorsese in this. Like just kind of let her do her thing. Had a lot of faith in her. The script was that good. The chemistry between the cast was that good. Who knows what elements it is? I'm sure it's all those things, and everyone just there being very good at their job. I guess that's ultimately what it comes down to. But it's just a very interesting and weird way, in my mind, to make a movie.
Yeah, and that's I think the good thing when you have, and that's where I always push back against Tarantino when he wants to retire. It's like that's the good thing about Scorsese directing films since the 60s and 70s. I think he has a good grasp of if something's going wrong. Like he would know day one, she's not right for this. Even if she looks the part, stuff like that. I feel like he is a guy that's pretty calculated, but to a point, to not the way where not like David Fincher where he takes 50 takes of Jake Gyllenhaal putting down a paper, and Jake Gyllenhaal will never work with him again because like we don't need 50 takes of me putting down a newspaper. But that's Fincher, right? And I feel like Scorsese's kind of like that to the pre-production, and once they're going, they go. And that always gets me very excited when I hear there's lots of improv, because I remember when we were filming our stuff and there's improv, I'm like, oh, is this like the proper way to do this stuff? But then I'm like, okay, Scorsese does it, so I'm taking that to heart. But yeah, I think that's kind of good too, because there's a lot of stuff you need to, I think it helps the scenes flow and it makes the characters feel more real. And a lot of things do that, right? We know Downey's a big person that way, but then that's why there's stuff like some filmmakers don't like that, where that was funny talking about the Oscars this year. This is the same year Gravity came out, and Downey originally had the George Clooney role, but they parted ways because the director just hated how much Downey was going off the cuff. He's like, no, this is a script, you're sticking to it. And Downey's like, yeah, I'm out. And that's where it's like complete opposite over here, right? And I think it's a good working mindset to have it, because you hired her, she auditioned. Obviously Leo doesn't have to audition, but I think it's kind of like, okay, you were right for the role, do what you can. And that scene, even I doubt she improv the who line, but it feels very fluid when he says who, and like who you fucking Al, and she comes back, and even Leo, and he's, don't you fucking dare, one more time, don't you, like it feels like a line, but it feels lived in. So they all do a very good job.
I have like so many more interesting things that I was looking into just about how the filming of this went. Should we just roll?
Yeah,
into
go,
that?
we could jump to different scenes like when we cross them and stuff like that.
Yeah. So quick side tangent here, but his name is Sea Otter in this. I forget like his actual name, but
Alden, right? Alden Kupferberg.
That's the one. Yeah. So that actor, his name is Henry Zabrowski, and so I first found him probably even before this movie came out, because he is one of the 3 members of the Last Podcast on the Left, which is like, in my opinion, one of the best podcasts out there. Is one of the first I listened to, and I still listen to it, and I draw a lot of inspiration from just how good those 3 guys are at podcasting. But anyway, he's one of the 3 in there, and he's kind of like on that podcast, he's very much like the zany guy. He'll do voices for characters, and he's very much, you can see why someone like that would be perfect in a movie like this, where it's just being crazy and over the top. So I've always loved that he's just randomly in this movie. He hasn't had like a huge acting career, is more known for that podcast, but he just seems to be in this movie somewhat randomly. But an interview I was reading about him talking about the making of this is that, kind of to your point, Travis, like they would do some improv. They would be just improving a scene. I guess like, here's like the point of this scene. So I don't even know if there would even be a script, and they're just kind of doing this, improving, figuring it out, trying it a couple times. And then even like Leo's in here, he would like type up the scene that they just improv, type up like the interesting tidbits from it. They would like give it to Scorsese. He would like add in a joke, and then they would just do it over and over again. And they would just iterate these scenes over and over in that very same way. And I just like, I don't know. I guess I'm used to movies having like a script, and you go off the script, and maybe like some things change, or you improv a joke here or there. But it seems like a lot of this movie, and I think they had like 6 months to film or something. So if you have a lot of money and a lot of time, you can do something like this. Where most movies don't have the luxury of trying to like do it this way. But even like this could be such a mess if you have actors who aren't great or don't understand what the overall vision of the movie is. So that was something that like just really stood out to me. And like that is just such a wicked way to make a movie. And the fact that this is a movie that was made in that way is even more surprising, because it seems like one of those ones that'd be so clinically like every joke and every line and every gag is written to perfection, and they planned all these shots. But it seems like it was definitely more of an iterative process.
Yeah, 100%. And like it's crazy thinking about some specific ridiculous scene. Like one scene that I just absolutely love is when you have I can't remember all of the people that are in there, but you have Jordan like in their office with Donnie. I think Rugrats in there, and maybe another guy, and they're just talking about just it's when they're getting the small people for like the lawn dart toss, and they're just going all these specific details, and the way that they're even just describing them, they're calling them like, yeah, we'll get it, and like just total pieces of shit, like just degrading like a human being, and they're just going off like it just is not like nothing's wrong with it, and it's just so entertaining the way that they think about those scenes. I think that is the same scene too when you have Rob Reiner, Mad Max come in just freaking out about like the budget and the $25,000 dinner that they had, and they're just like they're all coked up and everything, but they're just like they can't take the scene seriously. Like they just keep giggling and like, oh yeah, the EJ Entertainment or whatever it was. He's like, that's hookers, right? And they're just like cracking up. And Jordan's trying to be serious with his dad, but his buddies are just like setting him off. And it's so authentic, and that's what makes that scene so good. And knowing that it actually is improv, it's like, man, like how can they think of these things and just not laugh their asses off? But they also kind of are in those scenes, right? But it fits those characters. So yeah, I didn't know all these details about this movie. That's why I just wanted to keep going, because it's just so fascinating to me. Because yeah, I I just love those specific dialogue scenes, and comparing those to maybe some Tarantino movies where there's like super long dialogue about random things. Like think about the opening to Reservoir Dogs, right? With just like Mr. Pink talking about not tipping, and like it's a conversation about nothing, and I don't think that was improv. Like I'm pretty sure that was specifically written dialogue by dialogue.
Fucking comma in that.
Yeah,
yeah.
So,
Tarantino's very specific with it. Like I think he'll like, oh, we could change this that, but you're gonna stick to the script with it.
And that's what's so fascinating, is that both of those scenes, in my opinion, are just so masterfully done. But one is like to the script, to the detail, and one is just like built up off improv. Like obviously, it's not a one take sort of situation, especially what you filled in there, Dylan. Like he would be typing it up, taking out what's good, adding some tidbits and stuff, but the main meat and bones, like that is just classic improv, and it's so fascinating to me just hearing that stuff.
Well, and that's like to transition to like a different scene. That's what's so fascinating about the Quaaludes and the car scene. That was also all improv. It was written in the script as, okay, he's gonna get in the car, crash, and go away. They got there and like, hey, what can we do with this scene? And you could argue, like, I don't know if it's mine, but I feel like that scene is what people argue is like the funniest scene, or like one of the biggest set pieces of this movie, right? Of everything from when they take the ludes and it's reduced, so they're popping all many, like, oh, it's been an hour, nothing, they're working out. And I was like, what are you guys idiots doing? We're working out, honestly. And then it's such a combo of it's some of the best, obviously, like physical humor that both him and Hill have to do, but such a great combo. If you could still have that scene, it's funny, but when he's completely normal, he gets that call of don't be on the phone, like your phones are tapped, you got to get home and do this, and that's when it hits. And just everything from rolling to opening the car door with his foot, which like that throughout Leo's back, he only did it once because it was really straining. So it is kind of funny that in the movie he's always talking about his back. So very funny, him and Toby share that movie history where they have back problems, and they refer referred to in the same movie. But yeah, that scene again, also not only just dialogue, I guess of course, I think what they do is, like we said, he's at a hotel, he takes a call, he hits a Quaaludes, and he struggles to get back to his car. That's probably what it says in the script. And then they look at it and go, okay, what can we do with this and stuff? And that was, everything in that whole system. I'm sure, I don't even know if it's like the choking was improv, but like at least him getting to the car, that was something that Leo and the crew just one day of like, hey, what can we do with these stairs in this room, and create like a classic scene out of it. So.
Yeah, that's crazy that didn't even take them like a week or two of fucking around with it to get to where they ended up. It just once again, the instinct, I guess, for some of these actors is like top notch. And yeah, I think just having 6 months to make it actually helps a lot too. Or that's like I feel like a lot of time. Imagine that just every day for 6 months, just being on this set and just hashing out some of these scenes until you get it. It's pretty wild.
It's almost like you need Quaaludes and blow to get you through that, right?
I mean, I'm sure some of them, popped here there.
Adderall, at least.
I really like this quote from Robbie well, I'll just say the quote. The tone had been set that it was a bit of a free-for-all for the movie. It was kind of like the crazier you are, the more Marty's going to love it and the more screen time you're going to get. So it was a bit of a sink or swim situation, which, just once again, even like, I don't know, I imagine for most movies, you like storyboard and you plan these things out, but to not even really know exactly what the ending, just film a ton of shit for however many months, 6 months, give it to the editors and like see what they can do. And to Travis's point, the editing is great, but I think that's also a testament to how you talk about in the trailers, how that like the character that Robbie's playing seems pretty straightforward and you kind of know what it is, but the fact that she's takes what was given there and elevates it by some of those things, like insisting that a scene be done differently here or there, or just little changes. And I'm sure, she's also in those same rooms doing those, iterating some of these scenes and some of these fights that are, once again, they feel so genuine that they must have practiced them a million times and changed some things, removed things that felt too over the top, and just got it just right. So once again, very interesting that it's almost just like all these actors just trying their best to be the craziest and zaniest they can possibly be, because that's the only way you're going to get on screen in the end.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it feels very old school SNL-ish. That was kind of it. Like, if you popped, then you got
point.
more, and if not, so. And Marty comes from that kind of era. Not that he was in SNL, but just that era, right, of people. Probably similar movie productions were like that. If someone pops, they're going to get a little more screen time or a little more just lines of dialogue. So.
It's funny, like thinking about that too, and just how crazy, some of the characters go. Like specifically, like Jonah Hill's character, like just total piece of shit. But just some of the things that he does, like physically does to people, or just the way that he reacts, or just his dialogue. It's so ridiculous. So it's funny, kind of thinking about that motivation factor to get crazy, You think it's crazy? Go beyond that level and just fucking swallow a guy's goldfish right in front of him.
Which is funny you brought up that scene when you talk about things you catch that you never catch before. And that's one for this time I did where they have the goldfish guy and the whole thing is it's a big day. He's cleaning out the bowl. So they're all shitting on him and then eventually he's fired. But it's an actor. He's been in a bunch of little stuff. I think he's like in Silicon Valley and stuff like that. Yeah, and I don't know the name and everything, but he's been around. But it's this shot that after Hill eats the fish and they just shoot him. And I like that everyone's very loud and very rambunctious, but he's just very stoic. And obviously sad that he got like his fish ate, but it also just feels very bowling. And that's where it's like in the defense of trying to make this seem like not a good lifestyle. It's like here where you take a normal, presumably we're presuming this character is a normal guy just taking care of his fish, and his fish gets like mutilated from him and people are cheering, he gets fired. The actor does a good job, and even with the direction for showing him kind of downtrodden and showing like we're in this world. This is the point where we're probably past the 2-hour mark. So it's almost like you feel like this is a normal world, but there's certain moments or characters put in there to remind you that, hey, it's not, which he doesn't have much screen time either. But I think Kyle Chandler does a good job of that too, to try to bring you back to reality of, hey, this lifestyle you're seeing, it's crazy and rambunctious and it's out there. And it just looks like at times, like the lifetime, right? But there's a reason this is happening because most of it's illegal and you guys are taking advantage of the system and you're pretty much just living like thieves described. What am I trying to think? I
don't know.
Like, disguise. Thank you. Disguise as normal people and things like that. And that's where you have little moments when it brings you down. And again, same thing on the boat. I really like that scene when Jordan gets told specifically by his dad, don't talk to him, leave him alone, we're gonna figure this out. Next day, and I'm sure it's not like that in real life, but in our movie, next day he calls him and has this, and I love the way that they direct and have Kyle Chandler play that scene, that he's very everyman, and they start to bond, and he gets Jordan to kind of slip up a little, but then Jordan knows he didn't completely slip up because he didn't give him a dollar amount. And that's one thing I really love Leo, which I feel like he's done a lot more this generation, between Django, this, and definitely Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, where early Leo, he was always the cool, good looking leading man. And that's why I liked Leo, but when people would call him the best, I was like, he's just usually the same. He's always a good actor, but he's playing a similar type. I love how pathetic he's played some of these characters, especially in that boat moment. I love that he leaves and he's just like, yeah, you know what? You guys can just get the fuck off my boat. Like, he turns so quickly on them, and he's throwing the lobster at him, he's throwing the money. And what I love is they have the cops not look at him at all. So he has all this money, all this power, but he feels so powerless in this moment. And he's talking about all these girls are going to eat caviar off his ass, all these things. But whatever he's throwing at them, he can't get there. And that's what I love between the fish guy and Chandler's. And that happens a bit more down the line when Jordan gets arrested. But they put in little moments to kind of bring you back to reality, where most movies are the different, where it's like, oh, you're in a normal world and there's something fantastical happening. It's almost like we're in the fantastical world and normal things are kind of sporadically happening. And at the end, he gets the sledgehammer, obviously going to prison, realize like there is a very much normal world out there, and everything kind of gets taken down. Cause it's like, this isn't like we talk about the drugs. It's not a sustainable life. Cause it's not a real, yes, people can't, rock stars live this life, but the type of they were doing with the money, it's not a completely real life. You know, they were kind
sustainable.
No, for most it's not. No.
Yeah, I love that comparison to just the bully type of, because that is exactly what it is. Like, even just like the FBI agents, they just showed how to beat a bully in that moment. Like, just not even interact with him, and he just fucking like, he just was pathetic. Like he's like throwing out all these like he's like, look, I got your wage right in my pocket, coupons. And they're not even interacting, and like that just eats away at him so hard. And those just really, and I like your observation of just how Leo's evolved into that actor that can play that pathetic type character. Like, because I didn't even think about that, but in the early days he was just super handsome, always played like that charming,
he was a
charming role.
Yeah,
heartthrob, and he was really good at it. He was fantastic, and I understand why everybody just falls in love with him. But like, it's like the thing with Timothy Chalamet, how like I feel like everybody, well, not everybody, but vast majority of people that at least I interact, they just love the guy. He's just so heartwarming. He's just so charming. But
Leo. Yeah.
I haven't seen him in that super pathetic role or anything. Actually, what was that one movie with like the cannibals? He probably has some pathetic moments in that.
No, not really. He's just a darker version of a nice guy. Bones
so
and all.
In the future, like bones and all. That's
Bones
it.
and all.
Yeah.
So I just really like that observation about that bully environment, because even when the guy leaves and Donnie's like, get the fuck out of here, and then Jordan from his office, get the fuck out of here, and they're all throwing shit out of him, and he's totally cheering him on. It's like, and like I think it's either in that scene or another scene where like he's just pumped. He's like, this is what I want, that wolf mentality where everybody's just, they're eating each other to get the meat, right? Like when he throws his gold watch in the crowd and he's like, fuck him up. Like it's just, he's just feeding into that crowd. But like, that's the hungry mentality that he wants, because that's what he has. And he wants everybody else to have that, which is not something I agree with at all. But fuck, dude, that's that Wall Street environment. That's where like I watch this, I'm like, this could never be my life. Like, no way in hell. And it makes sense why everybody's fucking coked up and on Adderall in this environment. You have to be.
Yeah, well, and that's why I'd say, like, go watch, if everyone's not seen Babylon, watch that. That still happens in sports days where lots of people you got to have a mentality. Now, this is to the nth degree because there's lots of laws being broken and overly use of drugs and stuff. But I think that's the other portion I like too, where when Jordan is leaving and he gives that speech and he talks about that woman and giving her the money because he believed in her, and even Hill, he won't turn him in. He gives him the note and stuff like that, which fucks him over. That's what I love. It's kind of that same thing as the thick of thieves, that they will like stab each other in the back, but there's still like a level of respect they all have for each other. It's a sick and twisted respect, but they still have this kind of, you're either with us or against us, and you kind of, and I think that's a bully mentality too. The same thing of like, you could bully each other, but then eventually it's gonna be like you have each other's backs, and eventually Leo does turn on them all because he needs to get that money. And I looked into that. He only actually spent 22 months in prison, which is fucking nuts because he got 3 years, but still good behavior. And it is so fun. And I guess that's the thing, right? Because if you look at the level of crimes, he did it's funny. He probably gets. It's a way that what they actually dinged him for is not as bad, but when you see how much he actually does in the movie and just even actual drug use back then, he would have got dinged for so much more. But because, and I love that scene too when he's like, "You want me to rat?" And some of the cops are like, "No, we want you to get information." And he's like, "I don't know." And then Kyle Chandler's like, "Yeah, we want you to be a fucking rat. We want you to be a rat." And he says it in such a demeaning way because he knows it's going to eat Jordan. And I love that he can never get one over on Kyle Chandler's character. That's, I would say, maybe a nitpick. They could actually take out that subway scene because I feel like that's the movie's way of trying to say like Kyle Chandler does feel like a little depressed that he didn't have that life, but for the most part, even when he's telling him like you'll breathe normal, and under his breath, Jordan's like "fuck you," like, and Kyle Chandler's like, "What's that?" I was like, "Oh, not like he can never get past him because he has his number."
I almost see it slightly differently, where like him looking around on the bus, like he's free, like he's not behind bars. And
yeah,
like, that could
true.
be, like,
I try to read that way
lining.
too. Yeah. I just worry because that was the way, like the last line Jordan says, like, "I hope you enjoy your fucking ride home in the sweaty thing." And that's the last line Jordan says to him. And the next thing we get is him there, and it's interspliced with Jordan doing the "sell me the pen." So I can be fine with it, but that's why I do get some people on the devil advocate side of the ending. And like I said, with Jordan Belfort actually being there, and he does profit off this movie. The guy made like $1 million off this movie alone. It is that thing of like, okay, the messages don't do this, but at the same time, that guy is still thriving all this. But then we've talked about this podcast before too. What's the line of who gets a second chance and who does it and stuff like that, right? It's how would you feel if you found out one of your best friends like hit his wife? It's like, yeah, it's really your best friend, and maybe that was a long time ago, but how would that make you feel? Like that's a whole sort of life thing that they don't have to get into because Jordan Belfort did write a second book, so that's up for debate there. But it's an interesting kind of conversation to have with that ending of what is it portraying out there and stuff. So.
Yeah, I am glad that subway scene at the end is in there, just showing that, like, although Kyle Chandler's character is on the side of like the moral good side, like he is representing the law and bringing down this bad guy that's breaking the law and doing all this crazy shit, but like not everything is sunshine and rainbows, and it is like sacrifices. Like he could have taken the $500,000 bribe that Belfort was offering him, but he stuck to his morals, and like he is super straight arrow. And although like he lives to bring down assholes like this, like he still is making whatever he's making, and like has to pay his mortgage or whatever. Like he's taking the subway, and that's just the life that he's kind of chosen. Same thing that Jordan Belfort did, right? Like he didn't choose to take the SEC deal. He chose to stay and die with the ship, and look what it got him. Like he only spent 22 months in jail, but like the reparation payments were like $110 million or something. Like I looked into it just because I was curious, and he didn't spend a lot of time in jail. He also didn't murder anyone that I know of, at least. So, I mean, you kind of have to draw your own moral line on what's worse.
It went down.
Yeah.
That's Donnie, though. Donnie's in jail for 20 years for that one.
Yeah, they took him down. Well, and that's maybe like a bread and butter topic or something like that, but that's where it's just interesting as a society, right? Because you look at Jordan Belfort now, he's completely fine. He looks like he's back in the money.
Making money, He's an entrepreneur, though, right? It's in the DNA.
Yeah. But it's a tough thing, right? Of like the movie probably helped him. It did like that. That's where the case of that daughter that is, a daughter that probably saw some abuse happen, that she makes that point of, hey, this movie's gonna, help him profit, and he was a very bad guy. And again, you could that's such a tough conversation, right? Because it's like this guy that was on so much drugs. I'm not trying to defend the guy. I seem like he probably was a piece of shit back in the day. But do you forgive that person when they're straight and narrow now and they're not on drugs? Because one daughter he is good with, but that is her point, right? Of, hey, don't see this movie, don't support, because it's this is my life and it was awful, and you're helping this guy, and it helps this guy. He gets to be his Instagram is literally Jordan Belfort the Wolf, right? Like this did everything to make this guy have like a second coming in life. So when you play that scene of the subway, it is now the reverse, where you could say, oh, Kyle Chandler gets to have the moral freedom, but it's us as a society, we almost reward that. It's the same thing I thought about with these strikes, right? It's like, let's say these writers and actors go and strike, but like we still go and see these movies and support the studios. It's such like, and I'm not trying to condemn people, I'm just saying it's like that fine line of life of like the moral situations. I think think that's what this movie tries to do too, of like the moral situations that put these characters in, and that's where he could have done like. That's where I think the Belfort character is kind of making a point that he could have been on the straight and narrow, but he wasn't, and that made him very successful. But what does it say to us as society, right? What does it say is like breaking the law, doing all this stuff, living life every single way the wrong way, but he ends up on the up and up, and take that for what you will. And I think the movie dives into that a little bit. That's not the main focus of the movie, but I think they do that, which I appreciate. So
yeah, I won't defend Jordan Belfort, but to play devil's advocate to that, although the movie did make him more popular, the movie wouldn't have happened if he didn't write the book, right? Like he did, like he told the story and then it got adapted into the movie. So he did make that play to get this story even out there. Like if you didn't write the book, we never would have even seen this. We wouldn't have even known about the guy.
It's different than some serial killer murdering 40 people and then everyone watching the Netflix show about it. Yeah,
which I do, and that's why I always say I'm not trying to call people out, because I'm the fucking guy that watched Dahmer, right? I'm like, this is a great fucking show, but it's just like you have the same family that goes, don't watch this, you're the worst person you watch this. But I'm like, Evan Peters is really good in this. But I understand, especially when you're personally connected, right? Because I could never imagine the flip side of that.
So. No, exactly. Like I 100% understand the daughter's side of it, but still, like you have to draw your own moral lines, I think, with those things, because it is a difficult or a gray area. It's a difficult answer, not just a clear answer to have.
Is this the number one Leo performance for you guys? What's the ranking? I mean, I love Hollywood, but I feel like I gotta give it to this.
I think it is because he's the lead, but I still think so. I'll do this as I always cheat. I think this is the best, but my favorite is still Django, because I think if you look at the biggest piece of shit characters of all time, I think he ranks very high up there. It's not like for me like the Joker or Hannibal Lecter, where there's always something fun with the character. Leo has that, but you just hate him from moment start to end, and he starts awful and he gets worse and worse. And I think that Leo just like, and that was before this, and that to me, the same way when Tom Cruise did Tropic Thunder, that was Leo finally being like, hey, I'm gonna do some different stuff. And he did Django this, and once like he did a bunch of different ones, and even Don't Look Up, that's another type of pathetic character he plays, right? That's very anxiety driven, and he's like pill popping and stuff like that. But I'd say this is his I think this is his best role, because he has to lead so much of it. So
I also, of course, love Inception, but it's hard to compare like a very subdued character that is to how over the top and crazy like this or Django or Hollywood, like those type of characters. It's hard to put them in the same class, but I feel like it's got to be number one for me.
Like you talking about Inception, that is the carbon blueprint for what the roles he was doing. And he's always good at them, right? But that was his like first career. It was Titanic, and then he was like a love interest for a while, and then it was always a straight leading man who was always had charisma, but more like kind of downtrodden and serious. And that's where it's like it's a good role, but
beneath those eyes.
Exactly, yeah.
I was trying to think of just the list of what I would compare it to. And then I just remembered one scene from this movie. I mean, there's so many amazing scenes of him specifically from this movie and other projects, but I will say, yes, this is my favorite performance that he's ever done, and I think it's his best. I think he should have got an Oscar for this one. I'm not a big Oscar guy. I don't even know who won this year, but just seeing this movie, I'm like, this is an Oscar-winning performance.
Eddie Redmayne.
Eddie Redmayne for Hawking movie. Is that what it was?
No, yeah,
is that Eddie Redmayne? Is that who? I have that name right.
It's a good movie. It's subject matter, but it's one of like the first known cases of like a trans character.
Oh, okay,
trans person, not character. But that's what he won for, and it is a fine movie. I think it's just sometimes it's one of those that maybe I thought maybe won more for what the movie was about. And same thing, even with the controversy, it's like, well, do you give this to that character? Because sometimes it's tough when do you reward that in a sense, but.
Right. Yeah. But no, the specific scene that I thought of that I'm just like, I have to put this movie as my favorite Leo performance is when him and Donnie smoke crack. And he's like, just one hit, man, just one hit. And he just the way that he just portrays as someone that looks like he actually took a hit of crack, and he just fucking grabs Jonah Hill. He's like, let's run like lions in the street. And they just like go, man, like just the range that he reaches in this movie is it's just astounding. Like in the early portions, like he's super quiet and timid and like that fresh face on Wall Street, but just like very interested in like wanting to get into that lifestyle. He wants to be rich, right? And just the meeting with McConaughey, and then when he's just snorting blow out of hookers' assholes or when he's pumping up the crowd, like he just gets in all these different places, whether he's on Quaaludes or the scene on the plane when he's all strapped up and he's freaking out, when they're on the boat about to die and he's like, I'm
Oh
not
my God,
fucking
that boat
dying
scene,
sober.
The Ludes! What?
Get the Ludes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
yeah,
he's-
definitely my favorite Leo performance.
It's just one of those, like, you just list all those. It's just the versatility where in
Yeah.
all these other roles he gets to be like one or two of those things, but in this role he gets to do every single thing. So yeah, I think so. And another one I'd shut it is, I don't know if you guys seen this, but it's The Departed, another one he did with Scorsese.
Still haven't seen
And
it. Yeah.
that's where he is more like the classic Leo, but the good thing is he's an undercover cop, so he has to play. It's not a pathetic. He plays very frightened at times because it's a point where like at any point you could get figured out. But yeah, that's a top 10 movie of mine. Him and Jack Nicholson are great in it together. So it's and him and Mark. That's why I'm so excited for Killers of the Flower Moon this year. It's the first time him, De Niro, and Scorsese are working together in the same movie, because it's always him and De Niro have always been like close to working with Marty at the same time. I can't remember. I think Departed almost happened. And there was another one too where they've always been close. So like those trailers get me excited to finally see. Like you have same way we talk about Leo. The first 20 years of Scorsese's career was him and De Niro, and then the last half was him and Leo. And to get that together, it's like that's a very fun. Again, that's gonna be 3 hours. I don't think it's gonna be a thrilling movie like this. I think it's gonna be a much more depressing movie, but I'm very excited for it. So
Nice. This is less competitive, but Jonah Hill, I'd say this is got to be my number one role from him. I think we've mentioned him in passing here or there, but he, obviously he's not the star of this, but he is still just so fun, so over the top. I love the voice that he's doing. Obviously the teeth, I think, have an impact on like how he's able to talk, but just like the deep, like kind of grovelly voice, and the way he's like, he almost just feels gross about the things he's saying, but like but it doesn't hold him back in any way. Like he just knows who he is in that way. I love the look too of like the sweater vest and stuff that he wears, and, like the glasses and all of that. This is definitely got to be like my number one Jonah Hill character as well, I think.
Yeah, I think it's probably the best that he goes on, just with just what he has to do for this movie. But I just have such a soft spot for like the super bad era,
Yeah.
like Jonah Hill. I think it's just very nostalgic too. Like I remember just seeing those movies for the first time, and like that was the peak comedy for me in that era. Like that movie, like that Pineapple Express era.
That's a good point. I guess I feel like to an extent you can kind of that's like Jonah Hill almost. Not that he's being himself, but those roles all feel. This is just he's never really done a role like this where he's done a lot of those type ones. But of course, I
exactly
love that era too.
I do really just like him as an actor too. Like I think he's really good at Moneyball too. I really like that movie, even though he's super not to a full range like he is, and even like the movies like Superbad, he doesn't get as crazy. He's a lot more quiet, but he's a really good actor. Like I feel like I always just kind of put him into a box of that comedic side, but he definitely hits the range. He's very comedic in this movie, but he's also just like it is a drama movie at moments too, and I think he brings it. And to your point, like just the look, I think carries it so well. Like the fucking gross teeth that he has. He's got some boba teeth going, almost veneer like.
Yeah.
This movie, many times, I think his character especially looks like it's ripped out of a GTA game, and he looks like when you would get those loading screens of characters, I could see Jonah Hill's character like on the screen, like it's some mob boss you deal with. I think it's kind of the same thing I had as Leo, where I think this would be his best, but it's at least with Leo, I might think of this one first. Jonah Hill, I still always think is super bad. I think because it just came out at the age where that was what I was going through at that. Not the exact same situation and stuff like that, but I was in high school and stuff like that, or around there. And that's just such a kind of genre age defining movie, and he's such a good kind of straight man in that. So that's what I always jump to, is still super bad after all these years. There's certain little roles I jump to, like him in Forgetting Sarah Marshall, or I really do like him in This Is the End, because he plays like a caricature of himself, and it's kind of fun because there's like
earring.
Yeah, like because they're like there's a rumor like that people don't. Jonah Hill is maybe not like the most loved guy in Hollywood, so it's like that kind of works. There's another good one too. Oh my god, I can't remember the show him and Emma Stone did together. That's a show where he was very dramatic, and he was good in that. So that's another role I would put up there. So yeah, I can't remember, but Yeah, no, I like I said, best this, but I still think of Superbad I think I'll always think of Superbad when I think of him, Sarah, Christopher Plants, like Emma Stone, not so much now because she's grown out of that, but those three are always tied to. I just see that
Definitely.
poster in my head of those three on there. Just even that fucking weird jean tuxedo thing he's wearing the whole movie, you know.
So good.
Yeah.
I gotta say, I also feel like one of my favorite minor characters of all time in a movie has got to be Matthew McConaughey in this.
Yeah, he
which we were
kills
talking
it.
a little bit before we hit record here, but just like I'm curious how much he was on set and how much of that iteration or like improv happened for those scenes, because that feels like
think I have
every fucking letter in that he says feels like it was perfectly written to be just so amazing, hilarious. So like all the antics he's doing, obviously the chest beating thing is so iconic, but just all these little like one-liners that he's riffing off, the way he talks to the waiter, and you know, like bring on these drinks in 7 minutes and then another one more, and you'll keep doing that over and over again. And like the way he's talking about the drugs and how you just have to keep doing drugs to sustain yourself. Do the uppers, do the downers, all this stuff. And I think the line he says is like you gotta feed the geese to get the blood pumping. Whatever he says there just cracks me up every time. He is so good in this minor role here.
That's when Jordan's like, he's like you can just do drugs and drink and like still function at work. He's like, no, it's a requirement. It's like a prescription. like you need this to have. And then it goes to masturbation. He's like, you masturbate how many
You wake
times?
up, at least twice.
Three,
at least
4
twice.
times a week. Those are
Yeah.
rookie numbers. I mean, it's so iconic. I love
Yeah.
using that gif all the time. Those are rookie numbers. You gotta get those numbers up.
Well, it's funny too because what happens in later on in that scene is when it crashes, and you assume that character loses his job and probably loses a lot of money and thing. But that scene's almost proposed as like a passing of the torch from him to Leo. There's not that much of an age difference. They try and make Leo look a bit younger than him, but there's not a big age difference. But seems like McConaughey is at the end of his rope, not in a bad way, but just explaining, literally giving him all his secrets, and he doesn't have to because it's just this newbie. But yeah, he was only there for the second week, so it sounds like he was there for like a week and under. If you guys don't know this, the chest beating thing, that's completely, they pulled that from Matthew McConaughey because that's what he does before when he's acting, he does that to like get himself going. So it's just so funny, iconic from this. It's in the end credits. It pops up in the movie. And that's probably why McConaughey is in the end credits, because it's just that was his idea. And then it's something that I can't. Where was I'll read it for the. It was improvised and actually warm up. Yeah. Leo saw it while they were filming it. A brief shot of him looking away uneasily at the camera was actually looking at Martin Scorsese for approval. So there is that moment where he looks aside. DiCaprio engaged them to include it in the scene, and later claimed it set the tone for the rest of the film. So that's where it's something that he was doing, and they just same thing cut it. And that's where I love that literally they kept the cut of Leo looking over at Marty, being like, "Should we go with this?" And I just mean, like, yeah, do that, yeah, go. And then like he does the thing. So it's such a even so. And of course, McConaughey gets the leeway because at this point he's a big star, right? But even him, he's there for a week tops, probably not, and he does this iconic thing, and it's improvised by him, So again, it's like we talk about Robbie and the other people, and Leo. This is a guy who's in here for a very short amount of time, getting to do something. They're like, yeah, let's roll with that. That works, and it's an iconic thing,
He's the 4th name too on the cast. I don't know if you saw that in the credits.
Yeah.
That's
crazy.
It just speaks to his star power.
Well, it's kind of funny because other than Leo and him, I guess I would count Hill. There's not many like stars in this movie.
Bernthal wasn't big yet either, right?
No, he was on the up and up. Yeah, he was. Yeah, same thing. A lot of the other people, like you get the guy that's the principal in Spider-Man: Homecoming. You get the guy who was in My Name Is Earl. I guess Kyle Chandler would be the next. I don't know where he was billed, but at this time he was on Friday Nights at Lights at NBC. But these, like when you look at 2012, these are people that they're starting to become stars. But Leo and McConaughey were really the only big stars,
Not like a super big. Well, I feel like Rob Reiner is like a big deal in Hollywood, but like not a big like cast
None of that
star.
time. Yeah, none of that time where he's gonna be leading a
Top
movie where
bill,
McConaughey and Leo would be, right? Where it's funny, I never watched the trailers, but I always remember. I think people initially when it came out think McConaughey was going to be in this a lot more, but he is just in those 2 scenes. He's in that scene, then in the scene when it crashes, he's just, oh fuck, and then they do like the quick shot to that, and then I love that moment where it's loud, the phones, everything, and it's just dead silence, and it's over.
Yeah, I mean, I just love McConaughey in things, and in this one
Mhm.
specifically, he's so entertaining. Like, I feel like I'm just grinning the entire time that he's on screen. It's not a lot, but it's so entertaining. And like, even just when Leo gets there for his first day, and you have like that one asshole, it's just like, you are scum, you are nothing. Like, you know how much money I made? I made $300,000, and the next upper he made $1 million. And then like that's where he is in the hierarchy. And then the way that McConaughey just like treats that guy, he's just like throwing shit at him and just like totally just fucking with him. It's so entertaining. And like just the way that he like starts the day too. He's like, we don't pick up the phone at 9:30 because our clients are already answering the phones at 9:30. And you just like, fuck, I would want to work for that guy. I feel like he just gets the troops going. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. Like the thing slamming his chest, because like eventually they kind of get like on their little sync and they're kind of doing it together. And I feel like the way Leo plays that, he's like very excited by this. Like he feels kind of empowered, but it feels like the only reason that's pumping up McConaughey's character is probably because there's like so many drugs in his system that's like moving the blood around, and that's like literally waking him up in a way. But for Leo, it's just like he's just kind of in the moment. He's just kind of the starry-eyed kind of kid in this moment. So I love that they both have a very different vibe in that scene, even though they're definitely just making little music together. It's so funny.
I love it too because they're just at like a public like diner thing, and like you see people like in the back, like they're kind of reacting to like what's going on, and like McConaughey's literally like singing at a point, like he's like, yeah, keep the rhythm. He's like going downtown. Yeah.
Oh.
It's such a good like soundbite. God damn. Yeah, and it's funny you look at him too. That's like very similar careers, right? First half he was like the rom-com guy, and then he made a bunch of changes with Interstellar and True Detective and this and everything. So it's funny they have similar trajectories that way. They kind of we're always big stars, but just decide to change it up. So
See if Chalamet follows in that pattern.
he's young. He's got lots of
15
time.
years,
Yeah, exactly.
Let him have his
I don't wanna
early
do Wonka-
heartthrob days.
Yeah.
You can
I
have
don't want
it.
to do
You can
Wonka
have it.
5. I don't do Wonka 5. You know.
So you said that's like his tradition. Is that a tradition to like
Yep.
get people involved too? Like
I don't
keep that
think
beat
so.
going.
I guess we'd have to hear all the story. I think he did it and they liked it, and then they kept going. And then I don't think he always calls and adds that stuff, but I think that was the idea of, okay, let's play this up a little bit. I think
hope
it's
he
probably
doesn't
more like
caw. That would be
it's probably like
kinda
more just like a
off-putting.
vocal thing too, of just like getting like ready and
I that's what I read, is that it makes he said it makes his voice deeper when he does that. So,
Yeah.
a little life hack as well, perhaps.
I gotta do that before casts.
Yeah, we should. Yeah.
We should start doing it for sure. Yeah, without the cocaine, just
Yeah,
the
no, I
chest
don't
pain.
need coke.
Oh,
Not
too
for me.
late. Yeah.
Ooh.
And I thought in honor of this podcast, we were no.
Travis is just like, God,
Yeah,
whoa.
People think I talked a
Oh,
lot
yeah.
before. Oh my God,
So much energy.
Yeah.
I don't know if I have much else, just because like I could mention, I love this scene. It's great.
Yeah.
It's funny. This character also great. But yeah, I don't know if there's any other like really specific things I feel like I need to dig into personally.
I'll bring up John Bernthal, as I mentioned earlier
Sure.
on. This viewing was, I just appreciated him. Like every single time he was on screen, I just loved his character. The way that he was freaking out with Donnie, like Jonah Hill's character
So
later
good,
on,
that scene.
and also just like his introduction when Jordan Belfort is like explaining who this guy is. Like he's the best dealer in the world. Like he's the best salesman ever, but he doesn't, like, everything's illegal. He's just a pill dealer. And you just have those like kids coming to him working out. And he like grabs the guy's like penis or something. He's like, "Get a pussy with that thing." Just everything he says, it just had me dying. He's like, "You should bring your sister around." And he's like, she doesn't want to see you anymore. And he's just so weird. And then he's like, "Ma, are we having chicken?" Like, he's just so entertaining, man. I love the way that he played that character. He's always just like on edge too. Like he seems like he's always looking over his shoulder. Like it just seemed like
I love
a
in that
drug
diner
dealer
scene.
trope.
He's like so disconnected, just checking out everything else. I mean, I guess he's waiting for his catch up in that moment too.
And he just fucking whips it. Finally, 4 times I've been asking.
Yeah, I remember the
unhinged.
very first viewing being disappointed with his character, not because of the performance, just because when he gets out of jail, they just go away. Oh, and he died of a heart attack 2 years later, and they do that fun comparison of oh God, is it Picasso or somebody where it's like, oh, they died at this age with a heart attack. So I'm fine with it now because I've watched so many times, and he's a great character. I just always remember that first time, like, oh man, I really want him to always be more involved because he doesn't have that much actual screen time. But at that point, he was already one of my favorites because I was a big Walking Dead fan. I love Shane. I thought thought he was great as Shane. I was like, this guy could be something, and now he is something. But yeah, he's just a firecracker in this movie, and he's. I'd love to see him work with Scorsese again, just because he's just a very. Berthol's a guy that he doesn't get enough credit for having a lot of range, and he really does, and just even do some more comedy stuff, because that's not even as Punisher, even if he's in the MCU, I don't think his Punisher will be still made to have jokes and lightheartedness. Punisher's always the Punisher, so yeah, and the other reason I like that character as well, I like that the scene in the diner, though, when he does try to sell the pen, you have all these people that are smart and went to school, but you have this guy who understands because he's a drug dealer, supply and demand, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I do love that kind of callback at the end of the movie when because I think whatever you think about the ending of for morality things, as far as an ending to a movie, him going around doing the "Can you sell me this pen?" I think is like the perfect ending, and it ties back to him because it's like this is the one guy who could figure it out. Oh, I took the pen. Can you write your name? No, I can't. So that's where I do like that kind of tie together. So yeah, very fun performance he gets to have.
You taught me a good sales thing. I feel like I'll never forget that.
Yeah,
supply and demand.
Yeah. Yeah. No, the only. Oh,
sorry. I was just
gonna.
you go.
Whoa.
I was just gonna throw out Shea Wiggum. Is that how you say his name?
Yeah.
It shocked me seeing him. I feel like I haven't seen him in many things, but of course we just did Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning, and he was in there. So to see him as Captain Ted, that was just like, what the fuck?
Guy,
We had a little turbulence. Like how bad? Like break a couple eggs. Oh, break a couple eggs, and then just that smash cut to, oh my god! But I do love that.
Wave.
I do love that the scene does start with him. You can tell he does not want to go there, but the more Jordan tries to sell it, he's like, yeah, like we could do it. Like it might be like 8 hours. And then Jordan's like, 8 hours, that's nothing. And that's another great scene too. Like the last thing I'll show out there for that scene is when he finds out the aunt dies and he's so emotional about it, but Naomi thinks it's because like, oh, it's my aunt and we love her, but it's really just like the fucking money, like 22 million. And that we've talked about this before. The narration of the film's great. I love multiple times they do this with the aunt. They do this with
the
John,
Swiss banker guy.
Yeah, the Swiss banker, where you get Jordan's narrative and then you get their narrative of like, is she coming on to me? And then her being
so
like,
good.
this fucker's hitting on me. Like he's gonna make a move. Like I like that you get to break out of their consciousness, almost like you can imagine a world like they have their own movie of all their debauchery going on and they're intersecting the lanes. So I like that tool of the narrative. But yeah, Shea Wiggins, I always forget he's in this. And yeah, he's Gwen Stacy's dad and Across the Spider-Verse, and he just pops up in a bunch of places, but it's a fun little moment.
I always forget that Jon Favreau's in this movie too.
Me too. Yeah, I always forget that. It's like an advisor and they give him that chance. And that's probably, I don't know if I have to get a favorite scene, and probably the last thing I'll show about that for this particular thing, but is his last speech that turns into, obviously it's me always, but I'm not fucking leaving, because it's just like such a sway of emotions. And it is, we always talk about that. Jordan Belfort's already a bad guy, but we always talk about there's that point where a character goes too bad and you can't root for them anymore. And when they give him that perfect out to be like, you have so much money, you have a great life, you can live it all and get away scot-free with like, just be on probation pretty much, and which is not going to cost him anything because he's going to be at home. And just because that's where it is his love for the business, but it's also just his ego that he can't let anybody else go and do it. And just when he just finally like, I'm not leaving, everyone's like, what? He's like, I'm not fucking leaving. The show goes on. The circus keeps going. Everyone's cheering. And just his dad in the background is just like, Jordan, no. But every speech that he gives, that one in particular, but that's always the highlight of when he's on that stage. Leo is just a fucking animal, and he's just so good. And he said that was the hardest part of the movie for him to do each time he got up there, was to get to that level and be consistent with it. But all the speeches, but particularly probably to me the best scene in the movie is his goodbye speech, which turns around quickly. But it's great stuff up there.
Yeah, I love just his get hype moments too. Like when they're in like the bullpen and just it's chaos in there. But like when he just gets on another level and it's just him acting his ass off. But yeah, there's like that gif when he's just super pumped. He does like the bulldog face. Yeah, there you go. Thanks, Travis, for that. Like he just gets so like he's like a linebacker and he's just ready for like the fucking the what's it called? Super Bowl. There you go. The other scene I just wanted to shout out was it's after the scene I talked about earlier where his dad's freaking out about the budget and then his buddies just fuck off and they have like a one-on-one. It's like a more like real talk. Max, like, he calms down. He's not so heated. He's like asking about his home life and yeah, it's not going well. And like, he's just going on about, he's like, yeah, the women, these like, they're just different, you know, like they started shaving. Yeah. And and like his dad's like, really? Wow. He's like, I was born too long ago or whatever it was. So it was just, I feel like I didn't remember that scene going that ways, and it had me quite entertained because his dad was just so pissed off, and then he's like actually just having like a one-on-one with his son, like trying to get down, like, yeah, you're fucking like he knows what his son's doing. He's fucking hookers, he's doing blow, all these things. He's living fast and hard, but like, how is the home life? You know, like all these things, and like he's not going to try and control him. He can't control him. He's the Wolf of Wall Street, but he's still trying to be his advisor at all times. He's trying to be on his side at all times. And I just really like Rob Reiner as a dad character. Shay and I are watching New Girl again, and of course he's Jess's dad in that. So it's like, holy shit, look at that. He's just always a dad in things that I see him in. But yeah, he's a good character in this.
Well, anything else before I show a few little trivia before we take this one home?
Yeah, no, I think that's it for me.
Yeah, we kind of talked about that. Let's see. Yeah, we talked about that. The good thing is we hit on a lot of this. Yeah, one note that Jonah Hill took a pay cut and was being paid the SAG minimum, which was $60,000. So yeah, and he just wanted to work with Martin Scorsese. So that was something that, and he did audition for it. Martin said he didn't have to, but he did. So you have that. This is a very fun one. I really like. On a routine visit, Steven Spielberg spent a day on set watching the shoot of the Steve Madden speech. Martin Scorsese claims that Spielberg essentially co-directed the scene, giving him his advice, giving him and the actor's advice and suggesting certain camera angles. So just a fun little note that already in this great movie you have Steven Spielberg who like helped direct a scene, and like I'm sure because people like Leo who's worked with Spielberg before, but I imagine for everyone else that must have been so cool. Behind you're acting and probably actually fucking nerve-wracking as well.
Yeah,
you're acting behind the camera is Martin Scorsese and Steven Spielberg. You must like,
and they're like, just improv, just just do what you feel is right.
Nail it. Yeah, off the top of your head.
Yeah. Show me you can be the best.
Sink or swim.
Let's see there. Yeah, I talked about Leo with the stunt because he strained his back so he could only do it once. In the airplane, at one point when they look up, there's the sign of fasten your seatbelt. The blinking sign. They forgot to shoot it, so they didn't want to waste time and money spent like setting it up and shooting. So the effects supervisor took a reference video on one reference video during a flight with his iPhone he was on to show Scorsese. Upon seeing the footage, Scorsese said, "Great, let's just use that." The film was the first time that Scorsese used phone footage in the film, so they're gonna go back and reshoot something on a plane, but they just sliced it with an iPhone shot, which I never even noticed. So
yeah, man.
Let's see, and yeah, you talked about this earlier, Kirk, about like I can't remember, you referred to the success of it or something like that, but yeah, this is Martin Scorsese's highest grossing movie ever with $392 million, and because most time his movies they're lavishly made, but you know, budget can be a bit smaller. I think this next one is bigger, but it's Apple, so they don't really care. But yeah, all the other trivia we kind of hit, whether Dylan pointed out or we talked about during scenes and stuff like that. So yeah, final thoughts. I've said it all. It's an easy 10/10 movie. It's up there in that echelon of, like I said before, all the hyperbole. One of my favorite movies, one of the best movies, one of the greatest movies, all that stuff. It's just a great movie, and it's always one that I'm excited to boot up. And I never movies that you never get tired of watching. Those are the special ones. So yeah,
I completely agree with everything you just said, and I too will give it a 10 out of 10. Look at that.
Ooh,
that number
the
scaled back.
rare rating.
Every once in a while,
Yeah.
Usually just if it's a guaranteed 10, like I think I did it for Parasite
or
too,
0,
like, or 0,
1 or 0.
Yeah, 1 or 0.
Sink or swim, baby.
Binary ratings from Dylan Musk. Yeah, I on par with you guys. I'm 10 out of 10 for this movie. It's just so entertaining from start to finish. It's 3 hours, but I love sitting down and watching it. And yeah, although I don't watch it too often, it's a special time when I throw it on there.
Mm-hmm. Well, there you go. We hope this got you somewhat excited for Barbie, because obviously I think it's going to be a much different film. But, you know, we get to return to Margot Robbie, and there's a lot of cast members in that and everything. Who knows? But, yeah, talking about Michael Cera, you know, Jonah Hill, Michael Cera's in that. There's some 6 degrees of separation you could do. But, yes, we'll be reviewing that at some point. So thank you very much for tuning into this. Thank you very much for the patrons for selecting this, voting this, choosing this. And we promise when you hear from us next, it'll not be boring.
See ya.
Bye-bye.